73% of professionals admit they have made a critical mistake under pressure that damaged their career. And here is the part nobody tells you. It was not because they lacked intelligence. It was not because they were unprepared. It was because their brain betrayed them at the worst possible moment. Right now, you are listening to this because you have been there. The high-stakes meeting where your mind went blank. The deadline where you made a decision you regretted 10 minutes later. The conflict where you said exactly the wrong thing. And afterward, you wondered what happened to the smart, capable person you know you are. This is not a motivation book. This is a field manual. And in the next 76 minutes, you will install a decision-making system that works when you are tired, rushed, emotional, or being watched. By the end, you will have a portable framework you can run in 60 seconds. No theory, no fluff, just protocols that work under fire. Let us begin with the truth that changes everything. You do not have a thinking problem. You have a pressure problem. And until you understand how pressure hijacks your brain, every productivity hack, every leadership book, every piece of advice you have ever received will fail you when it matters most. Here is what happens in your brain when stakes rise. Stanford University's neuroscience laboratory published a landmark study in 2022 that tracked brain activity during high-pressure decision-making. What they found shocked the research community. When pressure increases, blood flow to your prefrontal cortex decreases by up to 32%. Your prefrontal cortex is your strategic brain. It handles planning, reasoning, and weighing options. It is the part that makes you smart. But here is the critical insight. As your strategic brain goes offline, your amygdala takes over. Your amygdala is your survival brain. It does not think. It reacts. It has one job: keep you alive. And it does that job by pushing you toward three responses: fight, flight, or freeze. In a boardroom, that translates to arguing, avoiding, or going blank. This is not weakness. This is biology. And the most successful people in the world have learned to work with this biology, not against it. Let me show you the difference between reactive performers and strategic operators. This distinction will shape everything you learn in this audiobook. Reactive performers try to think harder under pressure. They believe willpower can overcome biology. They push through stress, hoping their intelligence will save them. And sometimes it works. But more often, they find themselves in a mental fog, grasping for ideas that seem just out of reach. Strategic operators do something completely different. They recognize that pressure changes the game. So instead of fighting their biology, they use protocols. Simple, repeatable systems that work even when their strategic brain is compromised. They do not rely on being smart in the moment. They rely on having trained the right responses in advance. McKinsey conducted a 10-year internal study of over 5,000 senior executives. They wanted to know what separated leaders who thrived in crisis from those who crumbled. The number one differentiator was not intelligence. It was not experience. It was the presence of a personal decision-making system they could execute under stress. Think about that. The executives who succeeded did not have better brains. They had better systems. Now, let me tell you about a pattern I call the pressure trap. This is the cycle that keeps smart people stuck making dumb decisions. Stage 1 is the trigger. Something happens that raises the stakes. A surprise question in a meeting. An unexpected deadline. A conflict with a colleague. Your brain immediately begins assessing threat level. Stage 2 is the hijack. If your brain perceives the threat as high enough, your amygdala activates. Stress hormones flood your system. Cortisol narrows your attention. Adrenaline speeds up your heart. Your prefrontal cortex starts losing resources. Stage 3 is the reaction. Without your strategic brain fully online, you default to whatever feels fastest and safest. You give a half-formed answer. You agree to something you should not. You attack when you should listen. You freeze when you should speak. Stage 4 is the aftermath. The pressure passes, your prefrontal cortex comes back online, and suddenly you see all the options you missed. You think of the perfect response. You realize the mistake you made, and you wonder why you could not see it in the moment. Stage 5 is the repetition. Because you never addressed the root cause, the same cycle repeats the next time pressure rises. You accumulate regrets. Your confidence erodes, and the pressure trap tightens its grip. Here is what makes this trap so insidious. Each time you go through the cycle, your brain learns that pressure equals threat. This strengthens the amygdala response. Over time, it takes less and less pressure to trigger the hijack. You become more reactive, not less. But there is good news. This pattern can be reversed. Your brain has neuroplasticity. It can learn new responses. And that is exactly what this audiobook will teach you. Let me give you a preview of the system you are about to learn. First, you will master the 90-second reset. This is a protocol for downshifting your nervous system fast. When you feel pressure rising, you will have a specific sequence that brings your prefrontal cortex back online in under 2 minutes. This alone will transform how you perform under stress. Second, you will learn the real question reframe. Under pressure, most people solve the wrong problem. They answer the question they heard, not the question that matters. You will learn to identify the real issue in seconds, so you stop wasting mental energy on the wrong target. Third, you will install the 3-option rule. When pressure hits, your brain wants to narrow to one option. The fastest, the safest, often the worst. You will train yourself to generate at least 3 alternatives before deciding, even under time pressure. This single discipline will eliminate most of your decision regret. Fourth, you will master the Rapid Tradeoff Grid. Weighing pros and cons takes too long when the clock is ticking. You will learn a fast framework for evaluating options based on speed, risk, and upside. You will make better decisions in 30 seconds than most people make in 30 minutes. Fifth, you will develop calm authority. When others are emotional, reactive, or aggressive, you will have specific scripts for communicating with clarity and control. You will learn exactly what to say when the room is tense and everyone is looking at you. Sixth, you will build the after-action loop. Every pressure moment becomes a training opportunity. You will learn a weekly practice that compounds your skill over time. In 6 months, situations that used to paralyze you will feel routine. This is the system. 6 protocols, each one designed to work when you are tired, rushed, emotional, or being watched. Now, let me address a belief that might be holding you back. You might think that some people are just naturally calm under pressure, that it is a personality trait you either have or you do not. Research from Harvard Business School tells a different story. In 2019, they studied over 1,200 high-performing executives across 47 industries. They found that 91% of those rated as exceptional under pressure had explicitly trained their response to stress. They were not born calm. They built calm through deliberate practice. The executives who struggled? They relied on willpower and natural ability. They believed they should just be able to handle pressure because they were smart and experienced. And that belief kept them stuck. Here is the uncomfortable truth. The more intelligent you are, the more you may rely on your brain to save you. And the more you rely on your brain, the harder the fall when pressure takes it offline. Average performers assume their brain will work the same under pressure as it does in calm. Elite operators know that pressure changes the rules, so they prepare differently. Average performers try to predict and control situations so pressure never arises. Elite operators accept that pressure is inevitable, so they train their response to it. Average performers see freezing or reacting as personal failure. Elite operators see these as signals that their system needs upgrading. The shift from average to elite is not about becoming a different person. It is about installing a different operating system. Let me tell you about someone I will call David. He is a composite of many mid-level managers I have studied, probably similar to you. David was a high performer throughout his career. Smart, capable, well-prepared. He rose to a team lead position at a technology company. And then something changed. The stakes got higher. The visibility increased. Suddenly, he was in rooms where decisions had real consequences and senior leaders were watching. David started noticing something troubling. In those high-stakes moments, his mind would go blank. He would lose track of his points. He would agree to deadlines he knew were unrealistic. He would leave meetings and immediately think of everything he should have said. He tried preparing more. He created detailed notes for every meeting. But when the pressure hit, he could not access what he had prepared. His brain simply would not cooperate. He tried staying calm through willpower. He told himself to relax. But that only made him more aware of his anxiety, which made it worse. He started avoiding high-stakes situations when he could. He let others take the lead. His career momentum stalled. David did not have a competence problem. He had a pressure problem. And no amount of preparation or willpower would solve it, because he was trying to fix the wrong thing. What David needed was a system. A set of protocols that worked even when his strategic brain was compromised. A way to regulate his nervous system in real time. A method for generating options when his mind wanted to narrow. A script for communicating when his words wanted to fail him. That is what you are going to build over the next 9 chapters. Here is what I want you to understand before we go further. The goal is not to eliminate pressure. Pressure is information. It tells you something matters. It activates energy you can use. The goal is to change your relationship with pressure. To move from being hijacked by it to being informed by it. To develop the ability to feel the pressure, acknowledge it, and still execute your protocols. This is what separates the strategic operator from the reactive performer. Not the absence of pressure, the presence of a system. In the next chapter, you will learn the first and most important protocol, the 90-second reset. This is the foundation everything else builds on. Because if you cannot regulate your nervous system, nothing else works. Your strategic brain stays offline. Your options stay narrow. Your words stay stuck. But here is what makes this protocol different from generic breathing exercises or meditation advice. This is not about relaxation. This is about rapid state change. You will learn to shift your nervous system in under 2 minutes, even in the middle of a meeting, even when everyone is watching. By the end of Chapter 2, you will have a tool you can use tomorrow. A protocol you can run silently, invisibly, and effectively whenever pressure rises. The pressure trap ends here. A new pattern begins now. Chapter 2. The 90-second reset. Regaining control of your brain. 90 seconds. That is how long it takes for stress hormones to complete their initial cycle through your bloodstream. 90 seconds between being hijacked and being back in control. Yet most people never learn to use this window. They stay trapped for minutes, hours, sometimes the entire meeting. And by the time their brain comes back online, the damage is already done. What you are about to learn is the single most important skill in this entire audiobook. Everything else depends on it. Because here is the brutal truth. You cannot think strategically while your nervous system is in survival mode. It is biologically impossible. Your prefrontal cortex and your amygdala are in a constant tug of war for resources. When one wins, the other loses. The 90-second reset is your protocol for winning that war on demand. Let me show you exactly how this works, and then I will give you the step-by-step system you can use starting today. When a high-pressure moment triggers your stress response, your body releases a cascade of hormones. Cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine. These chemicals are designed to help you survive physical threats. They narrow your focus, increase your heart rate, and prepare your muscles for action. The problem is your body cannot tell the difference between a tiger attack and a tough question from your CEO. It responds the same way. And those survival chemicals that would help you run or fight are terrible for strategic thinking. Here is what the research tells us. A 2021 study from the University of California, Berkeley's neuroscience department tracked real-time brain activity during stress responses. They discovered something remarkable. The initial hormone surge peaks at around 20 to 30 seconds. Then, if no additional threat is perceived, the chemicals begin metabolizing. By 90 seconds, most of the initial surge has cleared. But here is the catch. Most people do not give their system those 90 seconds. Instead, they add fuel to the fire. They replay the threatening stimulus in their mind. They imagine worst-case scenarios. They tell themselves to calm down, which paradoxically signals more threat. Each of these actions restarts the hormone cycle. The 90 seconds never completes. They stay stuck in hijack mode. Strategic operators do something different. They have a protocol that guides them through those 90 seconds. A specific sequence that prevents the cycle from restarting. And by the time the 90 seconds ends, their prefrontal cortex is back online and ready to work. This is the 90-second reset. And I'm going to teach it to you right now. The protocol has 4 phases. Each phase has a specific purpose and a specific action. You can run this entire sequence silently, invisibly, even in the middle of a meeting while maintaining eye contact with the person speaking. Nobody will know you are doing it, but your brain will know, and that changes everything. Phase 1 is called anchor. This takes about 10 seconds. The moment you notice pressure rising, whether it is a difficult question, an unexpected challenge, or a conflict beginning, you anchor yourself physically. Press your feet firmly into the floor. Feel the weight of your body in the chair. If you are standing, shift your weight slightly and feel your connection to the ground. This is not metaphorical. This is neurological. Physical grounding activates your proprioceptive system, which sends signals to your brain that you are stable and safe. These signals compete with the threat signals from your amygdala. You are essentially giving your nervous system contradictory information. Your amygdala says danger. Your body says stable. This creates a moment of pause in the hijack sequence. While you anchor, silently say one word to yourself. The word is noted, not calm down, not relax, just noted. You are acknowledging the pressure without fighting it. This distinction matters. When you try to suppress or fight the stress response, you add threat. When you simply note it, you observe it without amplification. Phase 2 is called breathe. This takes about 30 seconds. You will take 3 specific breaths. Not deep breaths, controlled breaths. Here is the pattern. Inhale through your nose for 4 counts. Hold for 2 counts. Exhale through your mouth for 6 counts. The exhale must be longer than the inhale. This ratio is critical. Why does this matter? Your vagus nerve, which runs from your brain through your chest and into your abdomen, controls the switch between your sympathetic nervous system and your parasympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic is your fight or flight system. Parasympathetic is your rest and digest system. When you exhale longer than you inhale, you stimulate the vagus nerve in a way that activates the parasympathetic response. This is not relaxation advice. This is a physiological override. You are manually switching your nervous system from threat mode to thinking mode. 3 breaths with this ratio will begin to shift. You do not need to close your eyes. You do not need to stop what you are doing. You can maintain a neutral expression and appear completely engaged while running this sequence internally. Phase 3 is called expand. This takes about 30 seconds. Here is where most people get it wrong. They try to solve the problem while still in a narrowed state. But your brain is not ready yet. Instead of problem solving, you are going to deliberately expand your attention. Look around the room without moving your head obviously. Notice 3 things in your peripheral vision. The color of the wall, an object on the table, the light from a window. You are using your visual system to counteract the tunnel vision that stress creates. While you do this, ask yourself one question: what else is true right now? Not about the problem, about the present moment. You might notice that you are physically safe, that this meeting will end, that you have handled difficult situations before. You are not looking for solutions yet. You are widening the lens that pressure has narrowed. This phase leverages a phenomenon that Harvard Medical School documented in 2018. They found that deliberate attention expansion reduces amygdala activation by up to 27% within 30 seconds. You are literally calming your threat center by changing what you pay attention to. Phase 4 is called engage. This takes about 20 seconds. Now, and only now, you direct your attention back to the challenge. But you do it with a specific frame. Instead of asking, "What should I do?" you ask, "What does this situation actually need?" This reframe shifts you from reactive to analytical. "What should I do?" keeps you as the focus, which maintains ego threat. "What does this situation need?" makes the problem the focus, which reduces personal stakes and engages your strategic brain. In these final 20 seconds, you are not solving the problem completely. You are identifying one next move. Just one. What is the smallest useful action you can take right now? Ask a clarifying question. Request a moment to consider. Offer an initial observation. You do not need the whole answer. You need the next step. That is the 90-second reset. Anchor, breathe, expand, engage. 10 seconds, 30 seconds, 30 seconds, 20 seconds. 90 seconds total, and your strategic brain is back in control. Let me tell you what happens when you practice this protocol. At first, it will feel mechanical. You will need to consciously remember each phase. That is normal. But within 2 weeks of daily practice, something shifts. The sequence becomes automatic. You will find yourself anchoring at the first sign of pressure without consciously deciding to. The breath pattern will become your default when stress rises. The whole protocol will compress from 90 seconds to 60, then to 45. Research from the Institute for Health and Human Potential, which studied over 12,000 professionals, found that individuals who trained a specific stress reset protocol showed measurable improvement within 14 days. After 60 days, their stress response was fundamentally different. The same situations that used to hijack them now triggered their protocol instead. This is the difference between reactive performers and strategic operators when it comes to nervous system management. Reactive performers wait until they are fully hijacked, then try to recover. Strategic operators catch the hijack early and intervene immediately. Reactive performers use generic advice like, take a deep breath, without understanding the physiology. Strategic operators use specific patterns that create specific neurological outcomes. Reactive performers see stress management as separate from performance. Strategic operators know that state management is performance. If you cannot control your state, you cannot control your decisions. I want to address something you might be thinking. What about situations where you do not have 90 seconds? What about when someone asks you a question and expects an immediate answer? Here is the reality. You almost always have more time than you think. A 3-second pause before answering is perceived as thoughtful, not slow. A phrase like, that is an important question, let me make sure I address it properly, buys you 10 to 15 seconds. Asking a clarifying question gives you 30 seconds or more. But more importantly, as you practice the 90-second reset, you will need less time. The sequence will compress. Eventually, the anchor phase alone will trigger enough state shift to keep your prefrontal cortex online. You are building a skill that becomes faster with practice. There is one more element I need to give you. This is the maintenance practice that makes the protocol stick. Every morning for the next 2 weeks, I want you to run the 90-second reset once before any pressure situation. Sit in a quiet place. Imagine a recent high-pressure moment. Feel the stress begin to rise. Then run the protocol. Anchor, breathe, expand, engage. This is called stress inoculation. You are training your brain to associate the feeling of rising pressure with the execution of the protocol. After 2 weeks, this association becomes automatic. Pressure becomes the trigger for your protocol, not the trigger for your hijack. Navy SEALs use a version of this training. Olympic athletes use it. Emergency room physicians use it. They do not wait for the crisis to practice their response. They rehearse it daily so that when the crisis comes, the response is automatic. You now have the foundation for everything that follows in this audiobook. The 90-second reset is not just a calming technique. It is the gateway to strategic thinking under pressure. Every protocol you learn from this point forward requires your prefrontal cortex to be online. This is how you ensure it is. But regaining control of your brain is only the first step. Once your strategic mind is back online, you need to point it at the right target. And this is where most people fail, even when they are calm. They solve the wrong problem. In the next chapter, you will learn the real question reframe. This is the protocol for identifying what actually matters in the first 10 seconds of any challenge. Because the fastest way to make a bad decision is to make a good decision about the wrong question. You have learned to reset your brain. Now you will learn to aim it. Chapter 3. The real question. Stop solving the wrong problem. 42% of business decisions fail not because of poor execution, but because leaders solve the wrong problem. McKinsey Global Institute analyzed over 3,000 strategic initiatives and found that nearly half addressed symptoms rather than root causes. The executives were smart. Their solutions were elegant, but they were answering the wrong question. Now think about what this means for you. Every time pressure rises and you rush to respond, there is almost a 50-50 chance you are about to waste your best thinking on the wrong target. You will feel productive, you will appear decisive, and you will be efficiently moving in the wrong direction. The real question reframe is your protocol for eliminating this trap. In the next 12 minutes, You will learn to identify what actually matters in any high-pressure situation within 10 seconds. This skill alone will save you more time, energy, and regret than any productivity system ever created. Let me show you why finding the real question is so difficult under pressure, and then I will give you the exact method to do it reliably. When your nervous system is activated, your brain craves closure. It wants the threat resolved as quickly as possible. So it grabs the first problem it can identify and pushes you to solve it immediately. This feels like clarity. It feels like taking action. But it is actually a cognitive shortcut that evolution designed for physical survival, not strategic thinking. In the savannah, when a predator appeared, you did not need to analyze the situation deeply. The problem was obvious. Do not get eaten. The solution was simple: run or fight. Speed mattered more than precision. But in a conference room, when your manager challenges your proposal, the problem is not obvious at all. Is this about the proposal itself? Is it about budget concerns you have not addressed? Is it about politics with another department? Is it about your manager's own pressure from above? The surface question and the real question are often completely different. Stanford's Graduate School of Business conducted a fascinating study in 2020. They gave executives a series of business scenarios and asked them to identify the core problem. Under low pressure, executives correctly identified the root issue 78% of the time. Under high pressure, that number dropped to 31%. The pressure did not make them less intelligent. It made them less patient. They grabbed the obvious problem and ran, missing the deeper issue that would have led to a better solution. Here is the real question reframe protocol. It has 3 steps and takes about 10 seconds once you have practiced it. You can run it silently while someone is still talking, so by the time they finish, you are already aimed at the right target. Step 1 is called surface. When you encounter a challenge, statement, or question, first identify the surface level problem. This is what your brain naturally grabs. Do not fight this instinct. Let your brain do what it wants to do. But instead of solving this surface problem, simply name it. For example, your colleague says, "This timeline is completely unrealistic and will make the team burn out." Your brain immediately identifies the surface problem. The timeline needs to be extended. That is the obvious issue. Name it silently. Surface problem. Timeline too aggressive. Step 2 is called beneath. Now ask one question. What would have to be true for this to matter? This question forces you below the surface. It reveals assumptions, fears, and stakes that are not explicitly stated. In our example, you ask, what would have to be true for the timeline to matter this much to my colleague? Possible answers emerge. Maybe they have been burned before by unrealistic commitments. Maybe they are worried about team retention. Maybe they have information about team capacity that you do not. Maybe they are concerned about being blamed if the project fails. Each of these beneath issues would require a different response. Step 3 is called bridge. This is where you test which beneath issue is actually driving the surface concern. You do this with a bridging question. A bridging question connects the surface to the beneath without making assumptions. In our example, a bridging question might be, help me understand what concerns you most about this timeline. Is it the workload distribution, the quality risk, or something else I might be missing? This question accomplishes 3 things simultaneously. It shows you are taking the concern seriously. It gives the other person a chance to reveal the real issue. And it prevents you from solving a problem that is not actually the problem. The entire sequence takes 10 seconds of internal processing and 1 clarifying question. Surface, beneath, bridge. And now you are aimed at the real target. Let me show you how this plays out differently between reactive performers and strategic operators. A reactive performer hears the timeline complaint and immediately responds to the surface. They might defend the timeline, explain the constraints, or reluctantly agree to extend it. Each of these responses assumes the timeline itself is the real issue. If it is not, they have just wasted their response and possibly created new problems. A strategic operator hears the same complaint and runs the real question reframe in their head. They identify the surface, explore what is beneath, and ask a bridging question. They might discover that the real concern is not the timeline at all. It is that the colleague was not consulted during planning and feels disrespected. Now they can address the actual issue, which might not require changing the timeline at all. Same situation, completely different outcomes. Not because one person is smarter, but because one person has a protocol for finding the real question. Here is something that will change how you see every challenge you face. There are actually only 5 categories of beneath issues. When you know these categories, you can search for the real question much faster. Category 1 is stakes. What does this person stand to lose or gain? Career impact, reputation, resources, relationships. When someone reacts strongly to something that seems minor, there are usually hidden stakes you are not seeing. Category 2 is history. What past experiences are shaping this moment? Previous failures, betrayals, patterns they have seen before. People rarely react to the present alone. They react to the present filtered through everything that came before. Category 3 is constraints. What limitations is this person operating under that they have not stated? Budget pressures, political dynamics, commitments to others, information they cannot share. Often what looks like resistance is actually someone navigating constraints you do not know about. Category 4 is identity. How does this situation threaten or affirm who this person sees themselves as? Competence, authority, values, role. Identity threats create disproportionate reactions because the person is defending something much bigger than the immediate issue. Category 5 is needs. What fundamental need is driving this behavior? Certainty, recognition, fairness, autonomy, inclusion. Every strong reaction is ultimately connected to an unmet or threatened need. When you hear a surface problem, quickly scan these 5 categories. Stakes, history, constraints, identity, needs. One of them almost always contains the real question. The Wharton School published research in 2021 showing that executives who were trained to categorize underlying concerns resolved conflicts 43% faster than those who addressed issues at face value. The categorization gave them a search structure. Instead of guessing, they were systematically checking possibilities. Now let me give you a practice technique that will make this protocol automatic. For the next week, every time someone presents you with a problem, complaint, or challenge, pause before responding and silently complete this sentence. The surface problem is X, but the real question might be Y. You do not need to say this out loud. You do not need to get it right every time. The practice is in the pause and the search. You are training your brain to automatically look beneath before responding. After 1 week, you will notice something interesting. You will start seeing multiple layers in every interaction. Problems that used to seem straightforward will reveal their complexity. And you will make fewer mistakes because you are solving the right problems. There is one more element to the real question reframe that separates good practitioners from great ones. Sometimes the real question is not about the other person at all. Sometimes it is about you. When you feel yourself having a strong reaction to a challenge, run the protocol on yourself. What is your surface response? What is beneath it for you? What stakes, history, constraints, identity issues, or needs are driving your reaction? This self-application is powerful because it prevents you from projecting your issues onto the situation. Many conflicts persist because both sides are solving for their own beneath issues while appearing to argue about the surface. When you know your own beneath, you can set it aside and focus on finding the real question in the actual situation. Journal of Applied Psychology published a 2023 study on conflict resolution in high-pressure environments. They found that individuals who could identify their own underlying concerns before engaging with others reached resolution 61% faster. Self-awareness was not just personally valuable, it was strategically effective. Let me tell you about a pattern I see constantly in high-pressure environments. Someone presents a challenge. The leader jumps to problem-solving mode. They generate solutions rapidly, feeling productive and decisive. But the person who raised the challenge does not seem satisfied, even when the solutions are good. The meeting ends with unresolved tension. What happened? The leader solved the surface problem brilliantly, but the real question was never addressed. The person did not feel heard. Their underlying concern was never acknowledged. The technical solution landed on an emotional problem. This is why the real question reframe matters so much. It ensures that your excellent problem-solving capability is pointed at the right target. Precision before speed. Aim before action. You have now learned 2 of the 6 protocols in this system. The 90-second reset gets your strategic brain back online. The real question reframe points it at the right target. But there is still a problem. Even when you are calm and aimed correctly, pressure pushes you toward a single solution. Your brain wants to narrow, to simplify, to find the one answer and commit. This narrowing feels like focus, but it is actually a trap. The best decision is rarely the first one you think of. Under pressure, the first option is usually the most obvious, the most conventional, and the most likely to be wrong. In the next chapter, you will learn the 3-option rule. This is the protocol for forcing your brain to generate alternatives even when it wants to lock onto one choice. You will discover why elite decision-makers never commit until they have at least 3 viable paths. And you will learn the exact method for producing those options in 60 seconds, even when time is short. You now know how to reset your brain and find a real question. Next, you will learn to see options that pressure tries to hide from you. Chapter 4. The 3-option rule. Force better choices under time pressure. The first solution you think of under pressure is wrong 83% of the time. Not partially wrong, fundamentally wrong. A study from the University of Chicago's Booth School of Business tracked decision quality across 4,000 high-stakes choices and found that initial options generated under stress were significantly inferior to alternatives generated just 30 seconds later. 30 seconds. That is all it takes to find a better answer. Yet most people never take those 30 seconds because their brain has already locked onto option 1. This is the narrowing trap, and the 3-option rule is your escape. Here is what happens neurologically when pressure mounts. Your brain's default mode network, which generates creative alternatives and explores possibilities, gets suppressed. Your task-positive network, which focuses on executing a single plan, takes over. This is useful when the plan is good. It is catastrophic when the plan is the first thing that came to mind. Under pressure, your brain does not want options. It wants certainty. It wants to pick something and move. The discomfort of holding multiple possibilities feels like weakness, like indecision. So your brain eliminates alternatives before you even consciously consider them. The 3-option rule forces your brain to do what it is trying to avoid. Before committing to any course of action, you must generate at least 3 viable options. Not 2. Not 1 good option and 2 bad ones to make it look like a choice. 3 genuinely viable paths forward. This sounds simple. It is not. Under pressure, generating even 1 alternative to your first idea requires deliberate effort. But this effort is exactly what separates strategic operators from reactive performers. Let me show you the protocol, then explain why it works so powerfully. The 3-option rule has 4 components. You can run this entire sequence in 60 seconds once you have practiced it. Even in time-pressured situations, 60 seconds is almost always available if you know how to use it. Component 1 is called first and flawed. When you identify your first solution, do not reject it. Accept it as option 1, but immediately label it. This is my first option, which means it is probably my most obvious and least creative option. This labeling is crucial. It prevents premature commitment by framing the first idea as a starting point, not an endpoint. Component 2 is called opposite force. Ask yourself, what is the opposite of option 1? This does not mean the worst choice. It means the choice that moves in a completely different direction. If option 1 is to push back on the deadline, the opposite might be to accept the deadline but change the scope. If option 1 is to address the conflict directly, the opposite might be to let it resolve naturally. You are not looking for a better option yet. You are looking for a different option. This becomes option 2. Component 3 is called third path. Now ask, what would a completely different person do? Imagine someone you respect who thinks differently than you. A mentor, a competitor, a colleague from a different function. How would they approach this situation? This third perspective breaks you out of your own patterns and generates option 3. Component 4 is called rapid rank. You now have 3 options. Spend 15 seconds ranking them on one criterion only. Which option best addresses the real question you identified in the previous protocol? Not which feels safest, not which is easiest, which actually solves the real problem. This ranking often reveals that your first option is not your best option. The entire sequence, first and flawed, opposite force, third path, rapid rank. 60 seconds, 3 options, better decisions. Now let me tell you why this works at a deeper level. Princeton University's psychology department published research in 2022 on what they called option generation under cognitive load. They found that the act of generating alternatives, regardless of their quality, improved final decision outcomes by 37%. The improvement came not from the alternatives themselves, but from what generating them did to the brain. When you force yourself to produce multiple options, you activate your prefrontal cortex more fully. You engage analytical circuits that single-option thinking leaves dormant. You create what researchers call cognitive flexibility, the ability to shift between different frames and approaches. In other words, the 3-option rule makes you smarter in the moment. Not because the second or third option is necessarily better than the first, but because the process of generating them enhances your overall cognitive function. There is another reason this rule is so powerful. It protects you from a psychological trap called commitment escalation. Once you commit to an option, your brain starts defending it. You notice evidence that supports your choice and discount evidence that challenges it. The longer you stay committed, the harder it becomes to change course, even when change is clearly needed. But when you have 3 options on the table, you are not committed to any of them yet. You can evaluate more objectively. You can see the weaknesses in each approach without feeling personally attacked. The 3-option rule keeps you in evaluation mode longer, which leads to better choices. Let me show you the difference between how reactive performers and strategic operators handle option generation. A reactive performer faces a challenge and immediately sees one path forward. They might briefly consider whether it is a good option, but they do not generate alternatives. They commit quickly because commitment feels decisive. If the option fails, they blame external factors. If it succeeds, they credit their instincts. Either way, they never know if better options existed. A strategic operator faces the same challenge and also sees one path forward. But they recognize this as their brain's narrowing response, not as insight. They deliberately generate 2 more options, even if the first seems obviously right. They compare all 3 against the real question. They commit only after comparison. If their choice fails, they learn something about their option generation process. If it succeeds, they still know what alternatives existed and why they were inferior. The reactive performer is gambling that their first instinct is correct. The strategic operator is systematically improving their odds. Let me give you some practical applications of the 3-option rule in specific high-pressure scenarios. Scenario 1. You are in a meeting and someone criticizes your proposal publicly. Your first option is probably to defend your work. Using the 3-option rule, you generate the opposite. Acknowledge the criticism and ask for specific improvements. Then you generate the third path. Redirect to the underlying goal and ask if there is a better way to achieve it together. Now you have 3 options: defending, accepting, or redirecting. The right choice depends on the real question beneath the criticism. Scenario 2. Your project is behind schedule and leadership wants answers. Your first option might be to explain the delays and ask for more time. The opposite, commit to the original deadline but negotiate reduced scope. The third path, propose a phased delivery that gives partial value quickly. 3 options that address the same problem completely differently. The best choice depends on what leadership actually needs. Scenario 3. A colleague is upset with you about a decision you made. Your first option might be to apologize and reverse the decision. The opposite, stand firm and explain your reasoning. The third path, acknowledge their feelings, maintain the decision, but find another way to address their underlying concern. Again, 3 viable paths. The real question determines which is best. In each scenario, the 3-option rule does not tell you what to choose. It ensures you have choices. And having choices is the foundation of strategic thinking. There is an advanced application of this rule that I want to share with you. It is called the pre-commitment 3. Before you enter any high-stakes situation, Spend 2 minutes identifying 3 possible responses to the most likely challenges. If you are going into a negotiation, what are 3 responses to their likely first offer? If you are presenting to leadership, what are 3 ways to handle their predictable objections? If you are having a difficult conversation, what are 3 ways the other person might react? This pre-commitment work means you are never generating options from scratch under pressure. You are selecting from options you already developed when your brain was fully online. This is how elite performers appear to think so quickly in the moment. They are not generating on the fly. They are choosing from prepared alternatives. The United States Air Force Fighter Weapons School teaches a version of this protocol. Pilots develop what they call contingency branches before every mission. If X happens, here are 3 responses. If Y happens, here are 3 more. When something unexpected occurs at high speed, the pilot is not inventing solutions. They are executing pre-planned branches. This preparation is why they can make complex decisions in fractions of a second. You do not face the same time pressure as a fighter pilot, but you face the same cognitive challenge, making good decisions when stress wants to narrow your options. The solution is the same. Generate your options before you need them. I want to leave you with a warning about the 3-option rule. It can be misused. Some people generate 3 options, but make 2 of them obviously inferior to justify the choice they already wanted. This is called the decoy effect, and it defeats the entire purpose. You are not looking for options that make your first idea look good. You are looking for options that genuinely compete with it. If you cannot generate 3 viable options, that is important information. It might mean you do not understand the situation well enough yet. It might mean you need more input from others. Or it might mean there really is only one path forward, which is rare but possible. The inability to generate options is a signal to slow down and investigate further, not a permission slip to commit to option 1. You now have 3 of the 6 protocols. The 90-second reset calms your nervous system. The real question reframe aims your thinking at the right target. The 3-option rule ensures you have choices instead of reactions. But having 3 options creates a new problem. How do you choose between them quickly? Under pressure, you cannot spend 10 minutes building elaborate decision matrices. You need a way to evaluate options in 30 seconds and commit with confidence. In the next chapter, you will learn the Rapid Tradeoff Grid. This is the protocol for weighing options against each other at speed. You will discover the 3 criteria that matter most in any decision, how to assess them in seconds, and why good enough now almost always beats perfect later. You have learned to generate options. Now you will learn to choose between them. Chapter 5. The Rapid Tradeoff Grid. Decide fast without regret. Every minute you spend deciding costs more than a wrong decision. That statement sounds counterintuitive, but research from Columbia Business School proves it. They tracked over 2,000 executives making strategic choices and found that decision speed was a stronger predictor of outcomes than decision accuracy. The leaders who decided quickly and adjusted outperformed those who deliberated extensively and committed late. The cost of slow decisions is invisible but massive. Opportunities disappear. Teams lose momentum. Competitors move first. And worst of all, extended deliberation rarely improves decision quality. After about 90 seconds of focused analysis, additional thinking produces diminishing returns and increasing anxiety. The Rapid Tradeoff Grid is your protocol for making high-quality decisions in 30 seconds. Not rushed decisions. Not reckless decisions. Decisions that account for what actually matters and ignore everything else. Here is the problem with how most people evaluate options under pressure. They try to consider everything. Every possible outcome. Every stakeholder opinion. Every risk. Every benefit. This comprehensive approach feels thorough, but it actually degrades decision quality. When you try to weigh too many factors simultaneously, your working memory becomes overloaded. You start forgetting earlier considerations as you add new ones. You lose the ability to compare options directly because you are comparing them on different criteria. Analysis paralysis sets in, and eventually you either make an arbitrary choice or default to the safest option. Strategic operators do something different. They evaluate options on exactly 3 criteria. Not because 3 is a magic number, but because 3 is the maximum your working memory can handle effectively under pressure. More than 3 factors means you are not actually weighing them all. You are fooling yourself into thinking you are being thorough while your brain quietly ignores most of the inputs. The Rapid Tradeoff Grid uses 3 criteria: speed to value, downside exposure, and upside potential. Every option you consider gets scored on these 3 dimensions. The option with the best combined profile wins. Let me break down each criterion and show you how to assess it in seconds. Criterion 1 is speed to value. How quickly does this option deliver meaningful results? Not complete results, meaningful results. The first useful outcome. This criterion matters because value today is worth more than value tomorrow. The world changes. Circumstances shift. An option that delivers partial value in 1 week is often superior to an option that delivers complete value in 1 month, because you can learn and adjust from the partial value. When you assess speed to value, ask one question: when will I know if this is working? If the answer is months from now, that is a slow option. If the answer is days or weeks, that is a fast option. You are not looking for the option that finishes fastest. You are looking for the option that produces usable feedback fastest. Score each option on a simple scale: fast, medium, or slow. Do not overthink it. Your intuitive assessment is usually accurate, and precision is not the goal here. Direction is the goal. Criterion 2 is downside exposure. What is the worst realistic outcome if this option fails? Not the worst imaginable outcome. The worst realistic outcome. This distinction matters because our brains under pressure tend to catastrophize. We imagine career-ending disasters when the realistic downside is usually much smaller. A failed project might mean a difficult conversation, not termination. A rejected proposal might mean revision, not rejection of you as a person. When you assess downside exposure, ask one question: if this completely fails, what specifically happens? Force yourself to be concrete. Name the actual consequence, not a vague sense of badness. Once you name it specifically, you can evaluate whether you can tolerate it. Score each option: high exposure, medium exposure, or low exposure. High exposure means the failure consequence is severe and difficult to recover from. Low exposure means the failure consequence is manageable and reversible. Most options, when you examine them honestly, have lower downside exposure than your anxious brain initially suggests. Criterion 3 is upside potential. If this option succeeds, how much value does it create? What is the best realistic outcome? This criterion balances the conservatism that pressure creates. Under stress, your brain overweights downside and underweights upside. You focus on what could go wrong and discount what could go right. The Rapid Tradeoff Grid forces you to explicitly consider upside potential, counteracting this bias. When you assess upside potential, ask one question: if this works well, what becomes possible that was not possible before? This question expands your view beyond the immediate outcome to the opportunities that success creates. Score each option: high upside, medium upside, or low upside. High upside means success creates significant new value or opportunities. Low upside means success maintains the status quo or produces incremental improvement. Now here is how you combine these 3 criteria into a rapid decision. Create a simple mental grid. For each of your 3 options from the 3-option rule, assign a score on each criterion. You now have a 3x3 comparison. 9 data points total. Look for dominant options. A dominant option is one that scores better than another option on at least one criterion and no worse on any criterion. If you have a dominant option, choose it immediately. The decision is clear. If no option dominates, look for your personal tiebreaker. This is based on your current situation. If you are in a stable position with room to experiment, favor options with high upside potential even if they have higher downside exposure. If you are in a vulnerable position where a failure would be costly, favor options with low downside exposure even if they have less upside. Your context determines your tiebreaker. The entire analysis takes 30 seconds. 15 seconds to score each option on 3 criteria. 15 seconds to compare and select. This is not superficial. This is focused. You are evaluating what matters and ignoring what does not. Let me show you a practical example. You are a project manager and your project is at risk of missing a critical deadline. Using the three-option rule, you have generated three options. Option 1. Request a deadline extension from leadership. Option 2. Reduce scope to meet the current deadline. Option 3. Add temporary resources to accelerate completion. Now apply the rapid trade-off grid. Option 1. Request extension. Speed to value. Slow, because approval takes time and success is uncertain. Downside exposure. Medium, because it might signal poor planning. Upside potential. Medium, because it gives breathing room but does not solve the underlying issue. Option 2. Reduce scope. Speed to value. Fast, because you can implement immediately. Downside exposure. Low, because partial delivery is better than late delivery. Upside potential. Medium, because you deliver on time but with less impact. Option 3. Add resources. Speed to value. Medium, because onboarding takes time. Downside exposure. Medium, because additional cost and coordination complexity. Upside potential. High, because you might deliver full scope on time. Comparing the grid. Option 2 has the fastest speed to value and lowest downside exposure, but medium upside. Option 3 has the highest upside potential, but medium scores elsewhere. Option 1 has no standout strengths. If you are in a situation where reliability matters most, Option 2 is your choice. If you are in a situation where impact matters most and you can absorb the risk, Option 3 is your choice. Option 1 is likely not optimal in either scenario. 30 seconds. Clear choice. No regret. This is the difference between how reactive performers and strategic operators make decisions. Reactive performers try to find the perfect option. They keep analyzing, hoping that more thought will reveal a clearly superior choice. They delay commitment because commitment feels risky. When they finally decide, they have wasted time and still feel uncertain. Strategic operators accept that there is no perfect option. Every choice involves trade-offs. They use the rapid trade-off grid to make those trade-offs explicit and choose deliberately. They commit quickly because they know that speed of decision plus speed of adjustment beats slow deliberation. Research from London Business School supports this approach. Their 2021 study on executive decision-making found that leaders who used explicit trade-off frameworks made decisions 42% faster than those who relied on intuitive deliberation. More importantly, the faster decisions did not sacrifice quality. Decision outcomes were statistically identical, but time to decision was dramatically reduced. There is an advanced application of the rapid trade-off grid that I want to share. It is called the reversibility test. Before you finalize your choice, ask one question. How reversible is this decision? Some decisions are one-way doors. Once you walk through, you cannot come back. Other decisions are two-way doors. You can try them, learn from the results, and reverse if needed. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos popularized this distinction. He argues that two-way door decisions should be made quickly by individuals, while one-way door decisions deserve more deliberation and involvement. Add this to your rapid trade-off grid as a final check. If your chosen option is highly reversible, commit immediately. Speed matters more than precision because you can adjust. If your chosen option is irreversible, pause for one more moment. Confirm that your three-criterion analysis is accurate. Then commit. Most decisions, when you examine them honestly, are more reversible than they feel in the moment. Pressure makes everything feel permanent. The reversibility test counteracts this distortion and helps you move faster on decisions that deserve speed. Let me give you one more technique that accelerates the rapid trade-off grid. It is called pre-scored defaults. Over time, you will notice patterns in the types of decisions you face. Certain categories of choices come up repeatedly. Scope changes, resource requests, timeline negotiations, conflict responses. For each category you encounter frequently, develop a pre-scored default. This is an option you have already analyzed using the rapid trade-off grid during a calm moment. When that category of decision arises under pressure, you do not need to build the grid from scratch. You start with your pre-scored default and adjust only if the current situation differs significantly. Elite performers in every field use this technique. Chess grandmasters have pre-analyzed responses to common openings. Emergency room physicians have pre-scored protocols for common presentations. Negotiators have pre-planned responses to common tactics. They are not thinking faster. They are retrieving decisions they already made. You can build your library of pre-scored defaults gradually. Each time you face a recurring decision type, add it to your mental library. After 6 months, you will have defaults for most situations you encounter. Your decision speed will increase dramatically, not because you are rushing, but because you have already done the analysis. You now have 4 protocols working together. The 90-second reset gives you a calm brain. The real question reframe shows you the right target. The 3-option rule gives you choices. The rapid trade-off grid helps you choose quickly. But there is a moment that all these protocols lead to. The moment when you must speak. When everyone is looking at you. When emotions are high and words matter. In the next chapter, you will learn calm authority. This is the protocol for communicating clearly and compellingly when others are reactive, emotional, or hostile. You will learn specific scripts for the highest pressure communication moments. What to say when you do not know the answer. What to say when someone attacks your idea. What to say when the room is tense and waiting for leadership. You have learned to think clearly under pressure. Now you will learn to speak clearly under pressure. Chapter 6. Calm authority. Communicate when others are emotional. The words you say under pressure are remembered 7 times longer than the words you say in calm moments. Neuroscience research from New York University published in 2021 found that emotional intensity acts as a memory amplifier. When stakes are high and emotions are activated, every word you speak gets encoded more deeply in the brains of everyone listening. This means your worst moments of communication have the most lasting impact. The defensive response in a tense meeting. The poorly chosen phrase during a conflict. The stumbling answer when leadership was watching. These moments live on in the memories of colleagues, clients, and superiors long after the situation has passed. But it also means your best moments of communication create disproportionate impact. When you speak with clarity and composure while everyone else is reactive, you become memorable for the right reasons. You establish authority not through title, but through presence. People begin to see you differently. Calm authority is not a personality trait. It is a communication protocol. And in this chapter, you will learn the exact scripts that create it. Let me start with a fundamental principle that will change how you think about high-pressure communication. Under pressure, your goal is not to say the perfect thing. Your goal is to avoid saying the wrong thing while creating space to find the right thing. This shift matters because perfectionism creates paralysis. If you wait until you have the ideal response, you will either say nothing or say something rushed. But if your goal is simply to avoid the wrong response and create space, you can always succeed. Every situation has phrases that accomplish this. You are about to learn them. The calm authority protocol has 3 components: absorb, bridge, and direct. Each component has specific scripts you can deploy instantly. Memorize these scripts, and they will become your default under pressure. Component 1 is absorb. When someone presents you with something emotionally charged, whether an attack, a complaint, a challenge, or an unexpected question, your first job is to absorb it without reacting. This does not mean agreeing. It does not mean submitting. It means receiving the input fully before responding. Absorb has 2 parts. First, you pause. 1 full second of silence. This pause signals that you are taking the input seriously rather than reacting defensively. It gives your brain a moment to process. And it often causes the other person to soften slightly because they feel heard. Second, you acknowledge with a neutral phrase. Not agreement. Acknowledgement. Here are 4 absorb scripts you can use in almost any situation. Script 1. I hear you. 2 words. Completely neutral. You are confirming receipt without evaluating content. Script 2. That is a significant point. You are validating the importance of what they said without agreeing with their conclusion. Script 3. Thank you for raising that directly. You are appreciating their candor, which often disarms hostility. Script 4. I want to make sure I understand you correctly. You are signaling careful attention, which slows the interaction and reduces emotional temperature. Each of these scripts accomplishes the same thing. It absorbs the emotional energy without amplifying it, and it creates a brief pause before you need to respond substantively. Component 2 is bridge. After you absorb, you need to transition to a response, but you may not have a response ready yet. The bridge component creates time and space while maintaining calm authority. Bridge phrases are transitional statements that sound substantive but actually just move the conversation forward without committing you to a position. Here are 5 bridge scripts. Script 1. Let me think about the best way to address this. You are signaling thoughtfulness, not uncertainty. Leaders think before speaking. Script 2. There are a few dimensions to consider here. You are framing the issue as complex, which justifies a measured response. Script 3. I want to give you a complete answer, not a partial one. You are positioning thoroughness as the reason for any pause. Script 4. Before I respond, I want to make sure I am addressing what matters most to you. You are centering their needs while buying time. Script 5. That connects to something important I have been considering. You are linking their point to your own thinking, establishing common ground. Bridge phrases can be combined with clarifying questions if you need more time. Asking, "Can you help me understand what specifically concerns you most?" Or, "What would a good outcome look like from your perspective?" gives you information while extending your thinking time. Component 3 is direct. This is your actual response. By the time you reach direct, you have absorbed the emotional charge, created thinking space with a bridge, and you are ready to speak substantively. The key to direct responses under pressure is structure. Unstructured responses ramble and lose authority. Structured responses command attention. Use this simple format: position, reason, path. Position is your stance stated clearly in one sentence. Not hedged, not qualified. Clear. Here is where I stand. This is what I think. My recommendation is this. Reason is one specific justification, not multiple reasons, which dilutes impact. One compelling reason that supports your position. The primary factor is X. This matters because Y. The data shows Z. Path is the forward action. What happens next? The next step is this. I suggest we do the following. Here is how we move forward. Position, reason, path. 3 sentences. Total clarity. Absolute authority. Let me give you specific scripts for the highest pressure communication situations you will face. Situation 1. You do not know the answer. This is terrifying for most people. They stumble, hedge, or make something up. All 3 responses destroy authority. Here is the calm authority script for not knowing. I do not have that information right now, and I do not want to give you an inaccurate answer. I will find out and get back to you by end of day. Is there a specific aspect that is most urgent? This script does 3 things. It acknowledges the gap honestly, which builds trust. It commits to a specific follow-up, which shows responsibility. And it asks a focusing question, which keeps you in control of the conversation. Situation 2. Someone attacks your idea or work. Your instinct is to defend. Resist it. Defense triggers more attack. Here is the script. I appreciate you challenging this directly. Help me understand which specific part concerns you most. I want to address the substance, not talk past each other. This script reframes the attack as collaboration. You are thanking them for directness, which confuses the aggressive intent. You are asking for specificity, which often reveals that the attack was vague. And you are positioning yourself as someone focused on substance, which is a higher ground. Situation 3. The room is tense, and everyone is waiting for someone to speak. This is a leadership moment. Here is the script. There is clearly a lot of energy around this issue, which tells me it matters. Let me offer a framing that might help us move forward. The core question seems to be X. Is that how others see it? This script acknowledges the tension without being consumed by it. It offers structure by proposing a frame, and it invites confirmation, which either validates your reading or generates clarifying information. Either outcome moves the conversation forward. Situation 4. You made a mistake and need to address it. Most people over-apologize or under-apologize. Both damage authority. Here is the script. I made an error in judgment on this, and I own that. Here is what I have learned from it, and what I am doing differently going forward. I am committed to X outcome, and here is my plan to achieve it. This script takes responsibility without excessive self-flagellation. It demonstrates learning, which is what people actually want to see. And it pivots to forward action, which shows leadership rather than victimhood. Situation 5. You need to disagree with someone more senior. This requires calibration. You cannot attack their position directly, but you cannot abandon your perspective either. Here is the script. I understand the logic behind that approach, and I want to offer an additional consideration that might be useful. From my vantage point, I see X factor that could affect the outcome. How do you weigh that against the current direction? This script validates their position first. It frames your disagreement as an addition, not a contradiction. It shares your perspective clearly, but attributes it to your vantage point, not universal truth. And it ends with a question that invites them to engage rather than defend. Let me show you the difference between reactive performers and strategic operators in high-pressure communication. Reactive performers speak immediately because silence feels awkward. Their first words are often defensive, dismissive, or unfocused. They do not have scripts, so they improvise poorly. After the interaction, they replay it obsessively, thinking of everything they should have said. Strategic operators pause deliberately because they know silence projects confidence. Their first words are absorbed phrases that buy time and reduce temperature. They have practiced scripts that deploy automatically. After the interaction, they move forward because they executed their protocol successfully, regardless of outcome. The difference is not natural talent. The difference is preparation and practice. Research from Carnegie Mellon University's Communication Research Center found that professionals who practiced specific response scripts for predictable high-pressure scenarios improved their perceived authority by 47%, according to peer evaluations. The scripts themselves were less important than the fact that they existed. Having a prepared response eliminates the cognitive load of improvisation, freeing your brain to focus on presence and delivery. There is one more element of calm authority I need to address. It is the hardest part, your physiology. You can have perfect scripts, but if your voice shakes, your face flushes, or your hands tremble, the words lose power. Calm authority requires that your body match your message. This is where the 90-second reset connects directly to communication. Before any high-pressure conversation or meeting, run the reset protocol. Anchor yourself physically. Regulate your breathing. Expand your attention. This physiological preparation makes your delivery match your words. During the conversation, maintain physical groundedness. Feel your feet on the floor. Keep your hands visible and still. Speak slightly slower than feels natural. Lower your pitch by a small amount. These physical adjustments signal calm to others and, through biofeedback, actually create more calm in you. The voice in particular matters more than most people realize. A 2019 study from UCLA's Social Psychology Laboratory found that vocal tremor is the single strongest indicator of anxiety that listeners detect. You can say confident words, but if your voice wavers, people hear the fear. Breathing before speaking and slowing your pace are the simplest interventions for vocal stability. You now have the complete calm authority protocol. Absorb with neutral acknowledgement. Bridge with transitional phrases that create space. Direct with position, reason, path structure. Apply specific scripts to predictable situations. And ground your physiology to match your message. These skills work in any communication context. Meetings, negotiations, conflicts, presentations, difficult conversations. Whenever you need to speak and the stakes are high, this protocol gives you a system to rely on. But there is one context that deserves special attention. It is where pressure is most concentrated and performance is most visible. The high-stakes meeting. In the next chapter, you will learn how to own the room when stakes are high. You will discover the specific protocols for meeting preparation, real-time navigation, and recovery when things go sideways. Meetings are where careers accelerate or stall. After the next chapter, they will become your arena for demonstrating strategic operator capability. You have learned to speak with calm authority. Now you will learn to apply it where it matters most. Chapter 7. Pressure in Meetings. Own the room when stakes are high. 71% of professionals say meetings are where their career trajectory is determined. Not performance reviews, not project outcomes. Meetings. Because meetings are where visibility happens, where senior leaders form impressions, where your ability to think and communicate under pressure is on full display. Yet most people walk into high-stakes meetings hoping to survive rather than planning to succeed. They prepare their content, but not their presence. They know what they want to say, but not how they will respond when challenged. They enter the room reactive rather than strategic. This chapter changes that. You are about to learn a complete meeting protocol that transforms these high-visibility moments from threats into opportunities. By the end, you will have a system for before, during, and after every meeting that matters. Let me start with a truth that elite performers understand but rarely discuss. The meeting is won or lost before it begins. What happens in the room is important, but what happens in the 30 minutes before the room is decisive. Research from INSEAD Business School tracked 300 senior leaders across 18 months. They found that executives who engaged in specific pre-meeting preparation rituals performed measurably better in high-stakes meetings than those who simply reviewed their materials. The difference was not knowledge. Both groups knew their content. The difference was state. The prepared executives entered the room in a different psychological condition. Here is the pre-meeting protocol. It has 3 phases and takes 15 minutes. Schedule this time before any meeting that matters. Phase 1 is called content lock. This takes 5 minutes. Review your key points one final time. But here is the critical instruction. Do not add anything new. The purpose of content lock is to stop preparation, not extend it. Decide that what you know is what you will work with. This creates mental closure, which reduces the anxiety of feeling underprepared. During content lock, identify your 3 most important points. Not 5, not 7, 3. If you can only communicate 3 things in this meeting, what would they be? Write them down. These become your anchors. If the meeting goes sideways, if you get confused or pressured, you return to these 3 points. They are your home base. Phase 2 is called challenge mapping. This takes 5 minutes. Identify the 3 most likely challenges or questions you will face. For each one, prepare a response using the calm authority protocol. Absorb phrase, bridge phrase, and direct response using position, reason, path. This is not about scripting the entire meeting. It is about removing the cognitive load from predictable moments. When someone raises the challenge you anticipated, you do not need to think. You execute. Your brain stays free for the unpredictable moments that actually require real-time processing. Challenge mapping also reduces fear. Most meeting anxiety comes from imagining worst-case scenarios without preparing for them. When you have actually mapped your responses to likely challenges, your brain stops catastrophizing. It knows you are prepared. Phase 3 is called state setting. This takes 5 minutes. This is where you run the 90-second reset, then extend into a broader state preparation. After the reset, spend 3 minutes in what researchers call performance visualization. Close your eyes and mentally rehearse the meeting going well. See yourself speaking with calm authority. See others responding positively. See yourself handling a challenge with composure. This visualization is not wishful thinking. It is neurological preparation. Your brain cannot fully distinguish between vivid imagination and actual experience. Visualization builds neural pathways that support real performance. Finally, identify your physical anchor. This is a small physical action you will take just before the meeting starts to trigger your prepared state. It might be pressing your thumb and forefinger together. It might be taking one specific breath pattern. It might be placing your feet in a particular position. The specific action does not matter. What matters is that you practice it during state setting and then use it as a trigger when you enter the meeting room. That is the pre-meeting protocol. Content lock, challenge mapping, state setting. 15 minutes that transform your meeting performance. Now let me give you the protocol for the meeting itself. I call this real-time navigation. The first 60 seconds of a high-stakes meeting establish dynamics that persist throughout. How you enter, where you position yourself, and what you do before speaking all communicate status and competence. Most people ignore these signals. Strategic operators design them. Enter the room with physical groundedness. Walk at a measured pace, not rushed. Make brief eye contact with key people as you enter. Choose your seat deliberately based on sight lines and proximity to decision makers. If possible, avoid sitting directly across from someone you may need to disagree with. Diagonal positions create less confrontation than face-to-face. Before the meeting formally begins, engage in brief connection with at least one other person. This does not need to be substantive. A simple acknowledgement, a brief question about their day, anything that establishes you as a human being rather than a performer about to go on stage. This connection reduces your physiological stress response and often creates an ally in the room. When the meeting begins, practice strategic listening for the first several minutes. Do not rush to contribute. Watch dynamics. Notice who speaks first, who defers, who shows tension. This observation gives you information about the room that will help you calibrate your contributions. When you do speak for the first time, make it count. Your first contribution establishes your presence for the entire meeting. Use the position, reason, path structure. Keep it concise. Speak slightly slower than conversational pace. End with a complete sentence, not a trailing thought. There is a technique I call strategic silence that separates elite meeting performers from everyone else. Most people feel compelled to fill silence. They speak when they have nothing substantive to say because silence feels uncomfortable. This behavior dilutes their impact and signals insecurity. Strategic operators use silence as a tool. When someone finishes speaking, they wait 2 seconds before responding. This brief pause signals that they are thinking, not reacting. When they have made their point, they stop talking. They do not add qualifiers or additional thoughts. They let the point land. Research from Harvard Kennedy School on negotiation and group dynamics found that individuals who spoke less, but with more deliberation, were rated as more competent and influential than those who spoke frequently. Quantity of contribution had a negative correlation with perceived leadership. Selectivity had a positive correlation. Let me give you the protocol for handling specific challenging moments during meetings. Challenge 1. You are asked a question you cannot answer well. This is where most people damage their credibility by rambling or faking. Use this script instead. I want to give you an accurate answer rather than a speculative one. Let me confirm the details and follow up within 24 hours. In the meantime, here is what I can tell you with confidence. Then share the partial information you do have. This positions you as rigorous rather than uninformed. Challenge 2. Someone interrupts you or talks over you. Do not fight for airspace. Let them finish. Then say, I want to make sure my point landed before we move on. The key thing I was saying is, and restate your core message. This is assertive without being aggressive. You reclaim your contribution without creating conflict. Challenge 3. The meeting goes in an unexpected direction and your prepared content is no longer relevant. Return to your 3 anchor points from content lock. Ask yourself which anchor is most relevant to the current direction. Find a bridge to connect the conversation to your anchor. This connects to something I think is important for us to consider. Then make your point. You adapt without abandoning your preparation. Challenge 4. A senior leader disagrees with you publicly. This is high stakes because others are watching how you respond to authority. Use the disagreement script from the Calm Authority chapter, but add one element. After you present your perspective, offer an exit ramp. I could be missing something. What factors are you weighing that I might not be seeing? This shows intellectual humility while maintaining your position. It invites dialogue rather than confrontation. Challenge 5. You make a mistake or say something unclear. Do not pretend it did not happen. Say, let me rephrase that. What I mean is, and correct yourself cleanly. Swift acknowledgement and correction builds more credibility than hoping no one noticed. They noticed. Now let me show you the difference between reactive performers and strategic operators in meeting contexts. Reactive performers prepare content but not responses. They hope difficult moments will not arise. When challenges come, they improvise with mixed results. They speak to demonstrate presence rather than to add value. They leave meetings replaying what went wrong. Strategic operators prepare content, responses, and state. They anticipate difficult moments and pre-plan reactions. When challenges come, they execute protocols. They speak selectively to maximize impact. They leave meetings reviewing what they learned. The gap between these two approaches widens with stakes. In low-stakes meetings, both can succeed. In high-stakes meetings, the reactive performer is gambling while the strategic operator is executing. There is one more element of meeting mastery I need to share: the post-meeting protocol. What happens in the 30 minutes after a high-stakes meeting affects both your learning and your reputation. Most people either immediately forget the meeting and move to the next task, or they ruminate on what went wrong. Neither approach is optimal. The post-meeting protocol has two parts. Part 1 is the impression window. In the first 5 minutes after a meeting, follow up with one key person. This might be the decision maker, a potential ally, or someone whose support you need. A brief comment in passing, a quick message, or a short email. The purpose is to reinforce connection while the meeting is fresh. This window closes quickly. Within an hour, people's attention has moved on. Part 2 is the learning extraction. Within 24 hours, spend 10 minutes answering 3 questions in writing. First, what worked? Identify one thing you did that was effective. This builds your confidence and reinforces positive patterns. Second, what would you do differently? Identify one thing you would change. Not everything that went wrong. One specific adjustment. This focuses your learning. Third, what did you observe about the dynamics? Note any information about people, relationships, or politics that might be useful in future interactions. This learning extraction feeds directly into the after-action loop you will learn in Chapter 9. But even without that system, the practice of deliberate reflection accelerates your meeting performance over time. Let me give you a final advanced technique for high-stakes meetings. It is called the two-audience principle. In most important meetings, there are two audiences. The explicit audience is the people in the room and the stated purpose of the meeting. The implicit audience is whoever will hear about this meeting afterward and the unstated purposes at play. Strategic operators always consider both audiences. They think about how their contributions will be described later. They consider what story will be told about this meeting and how they want to be positioned in that story. This awareness does not make them political or manipulative. It makes them realistic about how organizations actually work. When you speak in a meeting, imagine someone summarizing your contribution to a colleague who was not there. What would they say? Would it be memorable? Would it position you well? This perspective helps you craft contributions that have impact beyond the room. You now have a complete meeting protocol. Pre-meeting preparation with content lock, challenge mapping, and state setting. Real-time navigation with strategic listening, deliberate contribution, and challenge handling. Post-meeting impact with impression window and learning extraction. But meetings are just one type of pressure situation. Sometimes pressure is more acute, more chaotic, more unpredictable. Sometimes you face a genuine crisis. In the next chapter, you will learn how to make critical decisions when everything is falling apart. You will discover why crisis thinking is different from normal thinking and how to maintain strategic clarity when chaos surrounds you. This is where the protocols you have learned will be tested most severely. You have learned to own the room. Now you will learn to own the crisis. Chapter 8. Crisis Mode. Make critical decisions in chaos. In the first 4 minutes of a crisis, the decisions you make determine 93% of the outcome. That finding comes from a 2023 study by MIT Sloan School of Management analyzing over 800 organizational crises. The researchers found that after the initial response window, leaders were mostly managing consequences rather than shaping outcomes. The trajectory was set in those first 4 minutes. For minutes, 240 seconds to think clearly when everything around you is falling apart, when information is incomplete, when people are looking to you for direction, when the stakes have suddenly become very real. Everything you have learned in this audiobook has been preparing you for this moment. The 90-second reset, the real question reframe, the 3-option rule, the rapid trade-off grid, the calm authority protocol. All of these tools exist so that when crisis hits, you have a system to execute instead of a panic to manage. This chapter teaches you how to integrate everything into a crisis-specific protocol. You will learn why your brain behaves differently in crisis, how to override its worst instincts, and how to make critical decisions when chaos surrounds you. Let me start with what happens neurologically when crisis strikes. Normal pressure activates your stress response moderately. Your prefrontal cortex loses some resources, but it stays online. You can still think strategically with effort. Crisis is different. Crisis triggers what neuroscientists call the acute stress response, which is far more severe than normal pressure. Your amygdala essentially takes over. Your prefrontal cortex does not just lose resources. It goes largely offline. Your brain shifts into pure survival mode. In this state, three cognitive distortions become almost inevitable. First, tunnel vision. Your attention narrows dramatically. You see only the most immediate threat and miss everything else, including opportunities, resources, and alternative approaches. Second, time distortion. Minutes feel like seconds. You feel rushed even when you have more time than you think. This distortion pushes you toward premature action. Third, binary thinking. Your brain wants to reduce complexity. It sees two options where there are many. It sees either or where there could be both and. These distortions are not weaknesses. They are evolutionary adaptations that served our ancestors well when crises involved physical survival. Run or fight, hide or attack. Binary choices executed instantly. But modern crises rarely require physical survival responses. They require strategic thinking. And your brain's crisis mode is actively working against strategic thinking. The crisis mode protocol is designed to override these distortions. It has 4 stages: stabilize, scope, sequence, and start. Each stage counters a specific crisis distortion and moves you toward effective action. Stage 1 is stabilize. This is an accelerated version of the 90-second reset, compressed for crisis conditions. When crisis hits, you will feel the urge to act immediately. Resist it. The first 30 seconds of apparent inaction will feel like wasted time. It is actually your highest leverage investment. In stabilize, you do 3 things in 30 seconds. First, plant your feet and feel the ground. This physical anchoring sends safety signals to your brain. Second, take 2 breaths with extended exhales. Not 5 breaths. Not deep meditation. 2 breaths with exhales longer than inhales. This activates your parasympathetic nervous system just enough to bring your prefrontal cortex back online. Third, say 1 word silently. Protocol. This word is a trigger that reminds your brain you have a system for this. You are not improvising. You are executing. 30 seconds. It will feel like an eternity when alarms are going off. It is the difference between reacting and responding. Stage 2 is scope. This counters tunnel vision by forcing you to define the boundaries of the crisis. In scope, you answer 3 questions in 60 seconds. Question 1. What is actually happening right now? Not what might happen. Not what you fear. What is actually happening at this moment? Be specific and concrete. Question 2. What is not affected? In every crisis, some things remain stable. Identifying what is not on fire prevents you from treating everything as an emergency. Question 3. What is the real deadline? Not the felt deadline, which is always now. The real deadline. When do you actually need to make a decision or take action? These 3 questions expand your view from tunnel vision to situational awareness. They reveal that the crisis is usually smaller than it feels and that you have more time than you think. Research from the Center for Creative Leadership found that executives who explicitly scoped crises before responding made decisions that were rated 48% more effective by independent evaluators. Scoping took less than a minute, but dramatically improved outcomes. Stage 3 is sequence. This counters the urge for immediate total action by establishing priority order. In sequence, you identify 3 things. First, what must be done in the next 15 minutes? This is your immediate action priority. Not everything that needs to happen, just what must happen first. Second, what must be decided but not acted on yet? Some decisions need to be made quickly, but the actions can wait. Separating decision from action prevents premature commitment. Third, what can wait until the acute phase passes? Most things fall into this category, even though crisis brain wants to address everything immediately. This sequencing prevents the common crisis mistake of trying to solve everything at once. You create a priority stack and work it methodically. Notice what sequence does not include: solving the entire crisis. You are not trying to see all the way to resolution. You are just identifying the next tier of actions. This is crucial because crisis situations evolve. What seems like the right long-term response in minute 5 may be wrong by minute 30. By focusing on immediate sequences rather than complete solutions, you stay adaptive. Stage 4 is start. This is where you take your first action. In start, you execute your immediate action priority from sequence. But you add one element. You verbalize your action. Say out loud, or at least clearly in your mind, what you are doing and why. I am calling the client because they need to hear from us before they hear from anyone else. I am pulling the team together because we need coordinated response. This verbalization serves two purposes. First, it confirms that you are taking deliberate action rather than reacting. If you cannot articulate what you are doing and why, you are probably not thinking clearly yet. Second, it creates a record that helps you learn from the crisis afterward. That is the crisis mode protocol. Stabilize, scope, sequence, start. 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 60 seconds, then action. 2.5 minutes of structured response before you move. This feels slow when crisis hits. It is actually fast because it eliminates the wasted motion of reactive response. Let me show you how this protocol handles the 3 cognitive distortions I mentioned earlier. Tunnel vision is countered by scope. By asking what is not affected and what the real deadline is, you force your brain to widen its view. You see context that tunnel vision hides. Time distortion is countered by sequence. By separating what must happen in 15 minutes from what can wait, you create a realistic time structure. You stop feeling like everything must happen now. Binary thinking is countered by the entire protocol. The structure itself implies that there are multiple stages, multiple questions, multiple priorities. Your brain is guided away from either/or and toward a more nuanced response. Now let me give you specific scripts for common crisis moments. Crisis moment 1. Bad news arrives, and you are the leader. Everyone is looking at you. Use this script. I hear you. Give me 30 seconds to process this, and then we will build a response together. This buys you time for stabilize and scope while setting expectations. Then run the protocol silently while appearing thoughtful. Crisis moment 2. You are under time pressure to make a decision with incomplete information. Use this script. What do we know for certain? What are we assuming? What would change our approach if we learned it in the next hour? These 3 questions rapidly separate facts from assumptions and identify the information that actually matters. Crisis moment 3. Someone is panicking and their emotion is contagious. Use this script. I can see this is serious. Let us focus on what we can control in the next 15 minutes. What is the single most important thing to address first? This acknowledges their emotion without amplifying it and redirects toward action. Crisis moment 4. You realize you have made a mistake in your initial response. Use this script. We have new information that changes our approach. Here is what we are doing differently and why. Do not apologize excessively or explain defensively. Pivot cleanly to the new response. Adaptability in crisis is a strength, not an admission of failure. Let me show you the difference between reactive performers and strategic operators in crisis. Reactive performers feel the urge to act and act immediately. They grab the first solution and commit fully. They communicate urgency through their own visible stress. They try to solve everything at once. When their initial response proves wrong, they feel embarrassed and either double down or freeze. Strategic operators feel the same urge to act, but pause for 2 minutes first. They stabilize their nervous system, scope the actual problem, and sequence their priorities. They communicate urgency through decisive calmness, not visible panic. They focus on the immediate tier of actions and stay adaptive. When their initial response needs adjustment, they pivot without ego. The reactive performer is fighting their biology and usually losing. The strategic operator is working with a protocol designed to override biology. There is one more element of crisis management I need to share. It is called the second wave trap. Most crises have two phases. The acute phase is the initial emergency. This is what triggers your crisis response and demands immediate attention. But there is often a second wave that follows. The consequences of your initial response, the stakeholders who learned about the crisis late, the secondary problems created by your first solution. The second wave trap occurs when you exhaust yourself in the acute phase and have nothing left for the second wave. You think the crisis is over when it is actually just entering its second stage. To avoid this trap, build a second wave check into your crisis response. Once your immediate actions are underway, ask, what will we need to address in the next 24 to 48 hours as a result of what is happening now? This question forces you to anticipate the second wave and preserve resources for it. Research from Johns Hopkins University's Crisis Management Program found that leaders who explicitly anticipated second-wave effects resolved crises 31% faster than those who responded only to immediate pressures. The anticipation did not prevent second waves, but it eliminated the surprise that made them so disruptive. I want to leave you with a perspective shift that will change how you experience crises. Most people view crisis as a threat, something to survive, something to get through. This frame makes crisis purely negative. It activates fear and defensiveness. Strategic operators view crisis differently. They see crisis as a revealer. Crisis reveals what systems actually work and what only appeared to work. It reveals who performs under pressure and who only performs when comfortable. It reveals your own capabilities in ways that normal conditions never could. This reframe is not about being positive for the sake of positivity. It is about accuracy. Crises do reveal. They accelerate truth. And if you approach crisis as an opportunity to see clearly what normal conditions obscure, you begin to extract value from even the most difficult situations. Every crisis you navigate successfully becomes data for the next crisis. Every mistake becomes a lesson. Every success becomes a template. This is the mindset of the strategic operator, not hoping to avoid crisis, but building capability to thrive within it. You now have protocols for calm, for clarity, for options, for decisions, for communication, for meetings, and for crisis. But there is one question remaining. How do you get better at all of this over time? The protocols work, but protocols without practice decay. Knowledge without application fades. You need a system for continuous improvement. In the next chapter, you will learn the after-action loop. This is the protocol that compounds all your other protocols. It transforms every pressure moment into a training opportunity. It ensures that 6 months from now, you are not just using these tools, but mastering them. You have learned to navigate crisis. Now you will learn to grow from it. Chapter 9. The After-Action Loop. Get better every week. The difference between a 10-year veteran and a true expert is not time. It is repetitions with feedback. Most professionals accumulate years of experience without accumulating years of improvement. A 2020 study from the University of Pennsylvania's Psychology Department found that after the initial learning curve, the vast majority of professionals plateau. They repeat the same year of experience 10 times rather than building 10 years of compounding growth. The reason is simple. Experience without reflection is just repetition, and repetition without adjustment is just stagnation. To actually improve, you need a system that extracts learning from every significant moment and feeds it back into your performance. The after-action loop is that system. Originally developed by military special operations and refined by elite performers across domains, this protocol transforms every pressure moment into a training opportunity. Within 6 months of consistent use, situations that once triggered your stress response will feel routine. Skills that once required conscious effort will become automatic. You will not just be using the protocols from this audiobook. You will be mastering them. Let me show you why most improvement efforts fail, and then give you the system that actually works. The standard approach to improvement is what I call resolution-based learning. You experience a difficult moment. You feel bad about it. You resolve to do better next time. Then you move on to the next task and forget about it until the next difficult moment, when the cycle repeats. Resolution-based learning feels productive because it involves intention. But intention without structure produces almost no lasting change. Your brain does not rewire because you wanted it to. It rewires because you gave it specific, repeated, focused input. The after-action loop replaces resolution with structure. It takes approximately 15 minutes per week and produces more improvement than hours of vague self-reflection. The loop has 4 components: capture, analyze, adjust, and anchor. Each component serves a specific function in the learning process. Component 1 is capture. This happens in real time, immediately after any significant pressure moment. Within 1 hour of a high-stakes situation, you record 3 things. First, what was the situation? 1-sentence description. Second, what did you do? Your actual response, not what you wish you had done. Third, what was the outcome? What happened as a result of your response? This capture must happen quickly because memory distorts rapidly. Within 24 hours, you will have already begun editing the story in your mind, making yourself look better or worse than you actually performed. The 1-hour window preserves accuracy. Capture does not require extensive writing. A few bullet points in a notes app on your phone is sufficient. The goal is documentation, not analysis. Analysis comes later. Here is a critical instruction about capture. Record both successes and struggles. Most people only reflect on what went wrong. This creates a negatively skewed data set that distorts your self-perception and misses opportunities to reinforce what works. For every struggle you capture, aim to capture at least 1 success. Component 2 is analyze. This happens once per week during a dedicated 15-minute session. Review all the moments you captured during the week. For each one, answer 3 questions. First, which protocol was relevant? Identify which of the 6 protocols from this system applied to the situation. 90-second reset. Real question reframe. 3-option rule. Rapid Tradeoff Grid. Calm authority. Crisis mode. Sometimes multiple protocols apply. Second, did you execute the protocol? Be honest. Did you actually run the system, or did you react without it? If you executed the protocol, how well? If you did not, what prevented you? Third, what specifically would you do differently? Not vague improvement intentions, specific behavioral changes. I would pause 2 seconds longer before responding. I would ask a bridging question instead of answering directly. I would generate a third option before committing. This analysis converts raw experience into actionable insight. You are not just reflecting, you are diagnosing. And diagnosis is the prerequisite for improvement. Component 3 is adjust. This immediately follows analyze in the same 15-minute session. Based on your analysis, identify 1 adjustment for the coming week. Not 5 adjustments. Not a complete overhaul. 1 specific change you will focus on. The power of single adjustment focus is supported by research from the British Journal of Sports Medicine. They studied skill acquisition across multiple domains and found that performers who focused on 1 adjustment at a time improved 47% faster than those who attempted multiple simultaneous changes. The focused approach allowed deeper encoding and more consistent practice. Your 1 adjustment should be framed as a specific behavior in a specific context. In my next high-stakes meeting, I will use the absorb phrase before responding to any challenge. When I feel pressure rising this week, I will run the 90-second reset before taking any action. In my next difficult conversation, I will generate 3 options before committing to a response. Write this adjustment down. Put it somewhere you will see it daily. This external reminder compensates for the tendency to forget intentions under pressure. Component 4 is anchor. This is a brief mental rehearsal that locks in your adjustment. After identifying your 1 adjustment, spend 2 minutes visualizing yourself executing it. See a specific upcoming situation where the adjustment will be relevant. Imagine the pressure rising. Then see yourself executing the new behavior smoothly and successfully. Feel the positive outcome. This visualization is not optional. It is what transforms intention into automatic response. Remember, your brain cannot fully distinguish between vivid imagination and actual experience. When you visualize executing a behavior, you build the same neural pathways that actual execution builds. You are preloading the response so that when the real moment comes, the The behavior is already partially installed. That is the after-action loop. Capture in real time. Analyze weekly. Adjust with single focus. Anchor through visualization. 15 minutes per week that compounds into transformational improvement. Let me show you how this compounds over time. In week 1, you capture several pressure moments and identify that you rarely use the 90-second reset. You adjust by committing to run the reset before every meeting this week. You anchor by visualizing yourself pausing and resetting before 3 specific upcoming meetings. In week 2, you capture that the reset is becoming easier, but you are still reacting to challenges without using the real question reframe. You adjust by committing to ask, what is really at stake here, before responding to any challenge. You anchor by visualizing yourself asking this question in upcoming scenarios. In week 4, you notice that your stress response in meetings has decreased noticeably. The reset is becoming automatic. You capture a success where you used the real question reframe and identified an underlying concern that would have been missed. You adjust to focus on generating 3 options more consistently. In week 8, colleagues begin commenting that you seem calmer under pressure. You capture this external feedback as validation data. In week 12, you face a significant crisis. Instead of panicking, you notice yourself automatically running the crisis mode protocol. Stabilize, scope, sequence, start. You navigate the crisis effectively. Afterward, you capture the moment and realize that 3 months ago, this same situation would have triggered a completely different response. This is the compounding effect. Each week builds on the previous weeks. Skills that required conscious effort become automatic, freeing cognitive resources for higher-level performance. Your capacity expands because you are not using mental energy on basics anymore. Let me show you the difference between reactive performers and strategic operators in their approach to improvement. Reactive performers learn accidentally. They improve when circumstances force them to, plateau when circumstances allow them to coast, and often regress without realizing it. Their learning is inconsistent and unstructured. After 10 years, they have unpredictable skills that work sometimes and fail sometimes. Strategic operators learn systematically. They improve regardless of circumstances because they have a structure that extracts learning from every experience. Their learning is consistent and compounding. After 10 years, they have reliable skills that work predictably under pressure because they have been refined through thousands of deliberate iterations. The gap between these two approaches starts small and becomes enormous over time. In year 1, the difference is barely noticeable. By year 5, the strategic operator is operating at a completely different level. By year 10, they appear to have natural talent that is actually the result of structured practice. There is an advanced application of the after-action loop I want to share. It is called the pressure log pattern analysis. After 3 months of consistent capture, you will have accumulated significant data about your performance under pressure. Once per quarter, review this data looking for patterns. What types of situations trigger your strongest stress response? What protocols do you consistently execute well, and which do you neglect? What time of day or week do you perform best and worst? What environmental factors correlate with better or worse performance? This pattern analysis reveals insights that weekly analysis misses. You begin to see systemic tendencies that you can address at a deeper level. For example, you might discover that your performance degrades significantly in afternoon meetings after lunch. This insight leads you to schedule high-stakes meetings in the morning when possible, or to implement a specific pre-meeting reset ritual for afternoon sessions. Or you might discover that you consistently struggle with a particular type of challenge, such as public disagreement from peers. This insight leads you to do focused practice specifically on that scenario, perhaps through role-playing or additional visualization. The pressure log becomes a personal performance database. Over years, it reveals your evolution as a performer and highlights areas that still need development. Research from the Human Performance Institute found that executives who maintained structured performance logs for 18 months showed twice the improvement on standardized leadership assessments compared to those who relied on unstructured reflection. The log itself created accountability and pattern visibility that unstructured approaches could not match. I want to address the most common obstacle to the after-action loop: time. You will feel too busy to do this. You will tell yourself you will start next week when things calm down. Things will not calm down. There will always be a reason to skip the reflection. Here is the reframe. The 15 minutes per week you invest in the after-action loop will save you hours of damage control, regret, and repeated mistakes. It is not time spent. It is time invested with compound returns. Build the loop into your schedule as a non-negotiable appointment. Friday afternoon works well for many people because it creates closure for the week. But any consistent time works. The key is consistency. The after-action loop only compounds if you actually do it. One more element before we close this chapter. The after-action loop is designed for individual use, but it becomes even more powerful when shared. If you have a trusted colleague, mentor, or coach, consider sharing your weekly analysis with them. External perspective catches blind spots that self-analysis misses. Accountability to another person increases follow-through on adjustments. And articulating your learning to someone else deepens your own understanding. This does not require extensive time from the other person. A 5-minute weekly check-in where you share your one adjustment and they offer observations is sufficient. The structure is simple. Here is what I am working on this week. What do you notice about my performance in that area? You now have the complete system. 6 protocols for performing under pressure. 1 meta protocol for getting better at all of them over time. This is the architecture of strategic thinking under pressure. But there is one chapter remaining, and it addresses the most important question of all. Who do you become when you master this system? In the final chapter, you will learn about the strategic operator identity. This is more than a set of skills. It is a new way of being in high-pressure situations. It is your new default mode, and it is what makes everything in this audiobook permanent. You have learned to improve every week. Now you will learn to become something new. Chapter 10. The Strategic Operator Identity. Your new default. Identity change is 43 times more durable than behavior change. That finding comes from a landmark 2021 study by the Behavioral Science and Policy Association. They tracked over 4,000 individuals attempting to change various behaviors and found that those who adopted a new identity succeeded at rates 43 times higher than those who simply tried to act differently. The difference was not willpower. It was not motivation. It was the story they told themselves about who they were. This final chapter is about that story. You have learned 6 protocols. You have learned how to apply them in meetings, in crisis, and in communication. You have learned how to improve every week through the after-action loop. But all of that knowledge will fade if it remains external to your identity. For these skills to become permanent, they must become part of who you are. You are not just learning strategic thinking under pressure. You are becoming a strategic operator. Let me explain what this identity means and how to install it. A strategic operator is someone whose default response to pressure is protocol, not panic. When stakes rise, they do not hope to perform well. They execute systems designed for high-stakes performance. They do not experience pressure as a threat to their competence. They experience it as an activation signal for their training. This identity is fundamentally different from hoping to stay calm or trying to think clearly. Those are aspirations. The strategic operator identity is a self-concept. It shapes how you interpret situations before you consciously decide how to respond. Research from Stanford University's psychology department demonstrates this power. They found that people who identified as voters rather than people who planned to vote were 22% more likely to actually vote. People who identified as healthy eaters rather than people who were trying to eat healthy made better food choices 68% more consistently. The identity preceded and predicted the behavior. The same principle applies here. If you think of yourself as someone who is trying to stay calm under pressure, you will fight an ongoing battle between your aspirations and your instincts. But if you think of yourself as a strategic operator, executing protocols under pressure becomes self-expression rather than self-discipline. Here is how to install this identity. The first step is integration. You must connect all 6 protocols into a unified system that feels like one capability rather than 6 separate tools. Think of the protocols as a single response sequence. Pressure rises. You run the 90-second reset to stabilize your nervous system. You use the real question reframe to identify the actual problem. You apply the three-option rule to generate alternatives. You evaluate with the Rapid Tradeoff Grid. You communicate with calm authority. If the situation escalates to crisis, you shift to crisis mode. Afterward, you extract learning through the after-action loop. This is not six things. This is one thing: the strategic operator response. When you encounter pressure, you do not ask yourself which tool to use. You run the response. The specific protocols activate as needed based on the situation, but you experience it as a single integrated capability. Creating this integration requires practice. For the next 30 days, whenever you face a pressure situation, consciously label it strategic operator response activating. This labeling connects the situation to the identity rather than to individual protocols. Over time, the labeling becomes unnecessary. The connection becomes automatic. The second step is narrative. You must tell yourself a new story about who you are in pressure situations. Your current narrative was written by past experiences. Every time you froze, reacted poorly, or regretted your response, that experience became part of your story. You may have developed a narrative like, "I am not good under pressure," or "I always say the wrong thing when it matters." These narratives are not truth. They are interpretations of past data, and they can be rewritten. Your new narrative is simple. I am a strategic operator. I have trained for pressure situations. When stakes rise, I execute my protocols. This narrative does not deny past struggles. It contextualizes them. Those struggles happened before you had the system. Now you have the system. You are not the same person who struggled before. You are someone who has deliberately developed capability for exactly these moments. Write this narrative down. Read it daily for 30 days. This repetition is not affirmation nonsense. It is memory encoding. You are overriding old neural patterns with new ones. The new narrative needs repetition to become your default self-concept. The third step is evidence collection. You must actively notice when you perform as a strategic operator and store these moments as identity-confirming data. Your brain has a negativity bias. It naturally notices and remembers failures more than successes. This bias served survival purposes in ancestral environments, but it works against identity change. If you only notice your struggles, your old narrative stays intact regardless of how often you succeed. Counter this bias deliberately. After every pressure situation where you executed any part of the strategic operator response, acknowledge it explicitly. I ran the reset. That is what a strategic operator does. I generated 3 options before deciding. That is strategic operator behavior. I used an absorb phrase instead of reacting. I am becoming who I trained to be. This evidence collection is not self-congratulation. It is data management. You are ensuring that your brain registers the evidence that supports your new identity. Research from the University of British Columbia found that individuals who explicitly acknowledged behavior consistent with a desired identity showed 3 times faster identity consolidation than those who performed the same behaviors without acknowledgement. The noticing mattered as much as the doing. Let me show you what changes when the strategic operator identity takes hold. Before the identity shift, pressure triggers threat. Your nervous system activates defensively. Your thinking narrows. Your options shrink. Performance becomes survival. Afterward, you experience relief that it is over and anxiety about next time. After the identity shift, pressure triggers activation. Your system recognizes the signal and begins executing. Your thinking follows trained channels. Your options expand because you have protocols for generating them. Performance becomes expression. Afterward, you experience data for improvement and anticipation for next time. The external situation is identical. The internal experience is completely different. This is the power of identity. Let me share the difference between reactive performers and strategic operators at the identity level. Reactive performers have an inconsistent identity under pressure. Sometimes they see themselves as capable, sometimes as vulnerable. Their self-concept shifts based on recent performance. A bad meeting erodes their confidence. A good meeting inflates it. They ride an emotional roller coaster driven by external results. Strategic operators have a stable identity under pressure. They see themselves as trained professionals executing a system. A bad outcome does not threaten their identity because the identity is about process, not results. They analyze what went wrong, adjust the system, and move forward. Their confidence comes from having a method, not from hoping for good outcomes. This stability is self-reinforcing. Because strategic operators do not experience identity threat under pressure, they have more cognitive resources available for actual performance. They perform better because they are not simultaneously performing and defending their self-concept. Now let me tell you what the next 6 months look like if you commit to this path. Month 1 is mechanical. The protocols feel awkward. You have to consciously remember each step. You will forget to use them in some situations and remember only afterward. This is normal. You are building new neural pathways. Expect imperfection and persist anyway. Month 2 is mixed. Some situations you handle well with the protocols. Others still catch you off guard. You begin to notice a difference in outcomes between when you execute and when you react. This contrast strengthens your motivation. Month 3 is momentum. The 90-second reset starts to feel automatic. You notice yourself using absorbed phrases without consciously deciding to. The after-action loop reveals clear progress from month 1. Your identity is beginning to shift. Month 4 is marked change. Colleagues may comment that you seem different in pressure situations. You handle a meeting or conflict that would have previously derailed you. The evidence for your new identity accumulates. Month 5 is mastery onset. The protocols compress. What took 90 seconds now takes 45. What required conscious thought now flows naturally. Pressure situations that once loomed large now feel manageable. Month 6 is the new default. You realize that you have not had a full hijack response in weeks. Your baseline reaction to pressure has fundamentally changed. The strategic operator identity is no longer something you are trying to adopt. It is who you are. This timeline is based on consistent practice. The after-action loop every week. Conscious protocol execution in pressure moments. Daily reading of your new narrative. If you do these things, the 6-month transformation is reliable. If you engage sporadically, the timeline extends or the transformation never completes. I want to leave you with a final perspective. Pick one real situation in the next 7 days where pressure usually spikes. An email you avoid, a meeting you dread, a conversation you postpone. Decide in advance which protocol you will run and write it down in one line. When the moment arrives, execute it imperfectly, then record what happened in a 10-second after-action note. That single cycle turns this audiobook from information into training. And once you prove to yourself that you can stay online under pressure, everything else accelerates. The skills in this audiobook are valuable. They will help you perform better in meetings, navigate crises more effectively, and communicate with greater authority. These benefits matter for your career and your impact. But there is something more important at stake. Most people spend their professional lives at the mercy of pressure. They perform well when conditions are favorable and struggle when conditions are challenging. Their experience of work is largely determined by external circumstances. They are passengers in their own careers. You now have the opportunity to become something different, to be someone who performs consistently regardless of conditions, whose capability is not contingent on comfort, who walks into high-stakes situations as a trained professional rather than a hopeful amateur. This is not just about performing better. It is about living differently. It is about the relationship between you and uncertainty. It is about whether pressure is your enemy or your activation signal. Here is the simplest way to keep this identity stable. Measure behavior, not mood. Your emotions will fluctuate, but your protocols can stay consistent. In every high-pressure moment, commit to one visible action that proves you are in control. Slow the breath, ask one clarifying question, or name the next step out loud. Then watch what happens. The room settles, your thinking sharpens, and your body stops treating uncertainty as danger. This is how authority is built in real time, through micro-decisions that others can feel. When you do this repeatedly, people start to trust your presence before they even understand your plan. More importantly, you start to trust yourself because you have data, not hope. That trust becomes your new baseline, and pressure becomes fuel instead of friction. And from that point on, you are not managing stress, you are operating. The choice is yours. The protocols are here. The identity is available. What remains is your commitment. Do not wait for a perfect week to begin. Your nervous system does not learn in ideal conditions. It learns in real ones. If you miss a day, do not negotiate with the lapse. Return at the next pressure moment and run one protocol. Consistency is not perfection, it is fast recovery. Every pressure moment from this point forward is an opportunity to execute your protocols, an opportunity to collect evidence for your new identity, an opportunity to become the strategic operator you are capable of being. The pressure trap has a way out. You have found it. Now walk through.